Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. In a recent interview with Japanese broadcaster NHK, Ukrainian President Zelenskyy said that a peace plan would be ready in the autumn. In an interview with the French newspaper Le Monde, he declared for the first time that citizens must be given the chance to speak about the possible handover of Ukrainian territory currently occupied by Russia. Well, we'll be talking to Bohdan Nahaylo, he's editor-in-chief of the Kyiv Post, about the prospects of a truce, peace, and the cost that Ukraine will still have to bear. Welcome, Mr. Nahaylo.
Good morning, Hashim.
Good morning. So, how is this going down in Ukraine generally and Kyiv in particular? The idea of giving up the land.
Well, look, let's not take everything at face value. There's a lot of action going on for positioning Kyiv, or whether it's Moscow, Washington, before public opinion. Ukraine has been promoting a peace forum. It's tried to get as many countries and NGOs together around the idea for a peace settlement being put forward by Kyiv. We saw that happen recently in Switzerland. Russia was not invited. The Chinese are enabler, mediator, as indeed are Turkey and other states. And so I think the onus now on Ukraine is to show the world that having garnered sufficient international support, it wants to go a step further and put even more pressure on Russia to come to the negotiating table, which does not mean that Ukraine is backing down or is ready to compromise. What Zelenskyy is after is to establish an international forum at which Russia will be forced to accept peace on the basis of the UN Charter, that is, recognition of Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty, and the borders of 1991, when Ukraine 33 years ago became independent. Now, clearly, there are many factors here at play. The Kamala Harris's appearance as the contender for the U.S. president from the Democrats, a game changer in the U.S. election buildup, and sending probably tremors of fear and concern in Moscow. So the situation has changed, and Kyiv also has to position itself in the international setting so as to be seen to be more actively promoting a peace settlement, though in brackets it remains on its terms. There's no hint of concessions.
Understood, sir. But I mean, and the way you've laid that out, hangs together perfectly. But you can't get away from the fact that President Zelenskyy is talking about holding a referendum on land for peace. Was that something designed to kind of get the conversation going, or is there some more meat to this?
Well, the substance is that by alluding to a referendum and saying it's impossible at this stage to give away territory, that the population won't accept it. He's also he's playing to the Ukrainian audience. Remember that Ukraine became independent 33 years ago this month, following a referendum in which 91% or so voted for independence. Right now, it seems that the fine print in the poll that was taken in May, but the results have just been published, show that 93% of the population want a democratic Ukraine to remain as a sovereign state, joining the EU and NATO, hopefully, as soon as possible. So that is the bottom line. And Ukrainian commentators are saying that appealing to a referendum reminds the Ukrainian public that they already made a major decision 33 years ago, and the vast majority would not ever consider giving up territory for peace. So that's the bottom line. It's a bit misconstrued in the West, where people are trying to read into it something more. However, I think it is very important to note that in the latest findings of the poll, compared to November of 2023, in May 2024, there are about 15% more of the population polled are willing now to engage in negotiations, talks with Russia, which doesn't mean concessions. Look, Zelenskyy has been promoting, as I've said, the idea of a peace forum. Ukrainians are behind that, but they want to get peace on their terms, sovereignty, independence, territorial integrity. What has changed, I think, is that 35%, which is a third now, are saying, well, let's consider perhaps just settling for the borders we had when the all-out war started in 2002 in February. That is, let's be prepared to concede the seizure of Crimea and part of eastern Donbass in 2014. That is the big difference. I think if there's anything that we have to pay attention to, it's that rise in the number of people prepared to make concessions. But it's still a third, not two-thirds, not a half.
Understood. Okay, so prepared to give up a little bit of land or a proportion of land. Of course, Crimea is symbolically important, as well as, of course, practically important in terms of trade and so on. But that said, clearly what's on the Ukrainian agenda is membership of the EU and NATO, and that seems to be a sticking point for Russia. And given that, I mean, is there any likelihood of a sustainable peace actually being negotiated?
I think there is, if Ukraine continues to hold its own and eventually force back in certain areas the Russians, and war weariness in Russia itself, and with Putin's policies that have isolated Russia, economically damaged its reputation, etc., etc. If that does take hold in Russia, then there are good chances that some kind of compromise can be made. Some face-saving concessions for Russia, but on the other hand, the real substance would be the proper security guarantees, not on paper, as happened before in history, but through membership of NATO. But the main, I would say, interim gesture of firm support for Ukraine would be the precipitated, accelerated acceptance of Ukraine into the EU, where the problem is not only Russia, but its allies, such as de facto allies, such as Hungary and now Slovakia, blocking this acceleration.
Understood. You mentioned the mood in Russia, and that might actually be influencing what happens going forward. What can you tell us about that mood? What is the sense on the ground with regard to the price Russians are paying for this war?
Look, we don't know to the extent that we should, because Russia is a closed society. The media are dominated by the state, and dissent is punished by imprisonment or death. So we guess at the fact that the supposed vast support for Putin and his policies and his aggression from the outset has been diminishing, not only as casualties mount and opposition to mobilization mounts, but also the economic costs, perhaps not felt as strongly in Moscow or St. Petersburg, but certainly in the outlying areas, that is taking hold. Plus, remember, your average Russian with some money in their pocket who was used to traveling to Europe, to exotic places in the Middle East or South Asia, now are hemmed in. Their children are not at Western schools, boarding schools. They can't buy their villas and houses in London or wherever. So I think that has been felt. But what is more important is how will Russians respond to this prisoner swap? What does that mean for Russia? Putin is playing it up as a victory. He's got his people back, his killer from Germany who killed a Chechen leader, a professional assassin, and others. He's playing that up as a victory. On the other hand, it can be seen as a sign of weakness. His willingness to give in, to make concessions, thanks to Turkish moderation as the go-between, and to hand over leading critics of his regime, not just the Americans and Westerners that were being held as hostages. So I think that that is a position that suggests weakness or uncertainty in view of the uncertainty connected now with the results of the November presidential election in the US. And this is, in a sense, not an effort to placate Harris and the Democrats, but to show that at the end of the day, some kind of space is open for negotiations, for talks, and not just sort of living in two divided worlds forever.
Understood, Bohdan. Now, in the last minute or so that we have left, Russia, not for the first time, has said that it's open to negotiation. What do you think is on that negotiation proposal?
Well, there's nothing new there. They are asking the Ukrainians basically to change their government. That's the bottom line, to neutralize, to give up any idea of NATO membership. Perhaps they would be able to accept, to swallow the idea of EU membership if they had sufficient territorial acquisitions in the south, Crimea and Donbass, and the land corridor to Crimea. But I think that at the end of the day, there's nothing new there. Putin is suggesting that the Ukrainians move even further westward, back out of most of eastern Ukraine. They failed to get the second largest city in Ukraine, which is on the border with Russia, Kharkiv, but they still want to have a huge chunk up to Zaporizhia and in the south, and to make that the new Russia, as they call it.
Right. Well, that sounds like a pretty tall order, certainly in terms of the Ukrainian sentiment as it stands currently. Bohdan Nahaylo, thank you very much indeed for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good day, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye. And that's all from us in this episode of World Talks. Don't go away. As always, lots more coming up. Bye for now.